Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I, the second son of Ferdinand III by his first wife Maria Anna of Spain, was born on the 9th of June 1640 and reigned over the German Holy Roman Empire and as King of Hungary, Croatia and Bohemia until his death in 1705. But none of that matters yet, because firstly there are some definitions to get to the bottom of. Primarily, that black is an adjective, not an ethnic identity, just as white is an adjective and not an ethnic identity. Even so, these two heavily political descriptors, amongst other haphazardly assigned colour categories such as red or yellow, have been used to lump together billions of people into rigid and constrained ethnic categories that all too often ignore or perhaps can't comprehend the blurred edges that define them. Categories that have created a paradigm in which we can call this painting of St. George black and this painting of St. George white. But what do these two distinct ethnic representations really represent? Because it's clearly not as simple as black and white. That being said, as an inhabitant of this post-colonial era in which understandings of ethnicity have been so unremittedly bastardized, I will be using the distinction of black and white to refer to Moorish and Caucasian peoples. Before any exploration can be conducted into the subject of whitewashing, in particular the whitewashing or Caucasianizing of blackness, Moorishness or Africanity, it's important to first understand blackness within the modern 21st century context in which the phenomena of whitewashing is being studied, albeit not nearly enough, as well as in a past when the distinctions between whiteness and blackness may have been far less obvious and perhaps not acknowledged at all. The average Western layman of today would agree unequivocally that this is a black person, and so are these, all ethnic African peoples exhibiting a spectrum of brown complexions on the African continent without foreign admixture. Indigenous peoples. Our modern layman would likely also agree that this person, exhibiting tones similar to those of indigenous African peoples, is what by modern standards we would also call a black person, as well as Mel B. However, upon the inspection of Melanie's ethnicity, we can also acknowledge that she is also of mixed ethnic heritage. Mixed heritage that she would likely identify with without that label subtracting from her blackness. She is biracial and she is black. She is both. This paradigm is highlighted to the extreme in the one-drop rule of the United States, a system of ethnic classification that meant that anyone with a visually discernible trace of African, or what used to be called Negro, and in times prior to that Moorish ancestry, is simply black. A system, it should be noted, is only possible in a society such as the United States that regards some races or ethnic groups of people as dominant or superior, and others as subordinate or inferior, thus creating the framework of hypodescendancy and the automatic assignment of children of a mixed union to the subordinate group. Thus, it was possible to be categorized a Negro with one drop of African blood, but not a Caucasian with one drop of so-called white blood. A law so convoluted that it led to the paradigm of white passing, after the economic subjugation of black people in the United States forced many white-passing Negroes to leave behind their black families and communities to integrate into white society in the hopes of securing financial independence and an education for their children, often hiding their heritage from their descendants. White passing, a paradigm still manifesting in the world today. Take the words of popular music artist Ashley Nicolette Frangipane, otherwise known as Halsey, born to a black American father and white mother. No matter how many tears I've shed because I'm not connecting with my family or my culture in a way that I would like to, or because the waitress thinks I'm the babysitter when I go out with my family, none of that would compare to the tears that I would shed for presenting phenotypically black and the disadvantages and the violence that I would face because of that. Less recent examples include the conversations around the ambiguous ethnic identity of Johnny Cash's first wife, Vivian Liberto, an Italian woman whose ethnic identity was often called into question, potentially implicating their marriage as criminal in the eyes of the anti-miscegenation laws of the time. And despite this significance and recorded aspect of their lives, casting directors of the 2006 movie Walk the Line, a movie depicting in part the life of Johnny Cash and his wife Vivian, decided to cast Vivian Cash with the snow white complexion of Ginnifer Goodwin. Nothing we haven't seen 100 times before though. The complexities of mixed heritage are a discourse nuanced and convoluted in our modern era, let alone when applied to the centuries of history that predate us. The Melungeons of America and the so-termed Coloureds of South Africa, to name a few. Ancient civilizations, unable to claim any one ethnic identity because they would have in essence been mulatto civilizations, existing on the melting pot convergence points of more homogeneous civilizations. I state this without, of course, disregarding the ethnic diversity within larger ethnic groups, such as indigenous black African peoples, which is a topic unto itself. Mulatto societies, who in their mixed identity, as in the case of Mel B, were still people we would call black, at least by our modern standards. The layers to mixed heritage are convoluted, and to peel those layers back is not the purpose of this video. But one crucial point I am attempting to convey is that mixed African identity is black identity, and that the history of mixed peoples is also therefore the history of black people, as well as the history of the Caucasian peoples that descend from them. Caucasians and every other ethnicity which descends from an African, which is to say, in the grand scheme of human history, anybody and everybody that ever walked on the earth. Black history and mixed ethnic history are shared human history, and despite being a part of the ancestral patchwork of people who might not classify themselves today as black people, doesn't make their ancestors any less black. Potential ancestors such as Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I. To explore the origins of the Emperor's potential Moorish heritage is not the aim of this video, nor is it the aim of this video to state with any certainty that he had any Moorish heritage at all, as the conversations to be had around Moorish presence in Europe, and in this case the German Holy Roman Empire, as well as across the globe, are only recently leaking into mainstream public consciousness and therefore academic research. This video instead intends only to present as much of the material culture that we possess depicting this emperor, mainly portraits, some of which, and I'll leave you to guess which, were concerningly, although unsurprisingly, very difficult to find, even in this age of the World Wide Web. Why certain of these portraits, although contemporaneous with the emperor's lived years and preserved in such impeccable quality, are so inaccessible to the public, I'll additionally leave to you to come to your own conclusions, and I'll probably meet the vast majority of you at that inevitable conclusion. And for those still struggling to put their finger on it, here's a clue. It begins with W and rhymes with white supremacy. But as a final word before these portraits are presented, it's important to state unequivocally for anybody that doesn't believe it's so, that whitewashing, whether it pertains to these portraits or not, exists and is a continuous fact of life even today. For example, in the case of Dwayne Johnson's public rejection of his wax statue in Paris's Musée Grévin, or even by less physical means, in a still unfolding presidential campaign in which it's apparently of greater importance to scrutinise a presidential nominee's ethnic identity than debate the very real and tangible death throes of the crumbling American empire. A laughably self-termed Christian nation, who likely wouldn't be so if Europe hadn't also whitewashed God itself. After all, James Baldwin stated it best: Swedes don't come from Israel.